All right, we are live. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the Atheist Experience. Today is Sunday, August 9th, 2020. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week after an absence where we haven't been able to do a show together for a while, Jenna Belk. How are you?
I'm doing much better. How are you?
I'm doing much better, and in part thanks to you, so thanks again. Some quick notations and announcements and other things to get out of the way. If you're watching us live on YouTube, and if you watch, I think evidently the rebroadcast of this over the week or whatever, in any case, go up above the chat. There's a donate link there. 100% of the donations there go directly to the atheist community of Austin. Google doesn't take a cut. YouTube doesn't take a cut. We're a nonprofit. It's the best way to support us, get money directly in our hands. But if you want to find other ways to potentially support us, you can apologize to Vern for all the mistakes that I make, but you can also go and check out the merchandise that we've got available at bit.ly/AEN merch. And you can also do a membership at the YouTube thing, or you can go to the Patreon, patreon.com/ oh crap, I've lost it. I've lost the link for Patreon. Oh, the joys of doing it all live. And in any case, the people who really matter, in addition to Jenna, of course, this motley group of people who make the show happen, who screen the calls, who run the tech, who are doing it all from home during a global pandemic and doing just a phenomenal job. I know that there was a hiccup earlier during one of the other shows and they got it fixed quickly, and we're excited and looking forward to that as well. I have one thing that I want to talk about before we actually go live, and that was some unfortunate news that I got this week. Several years ago, a friend of mine named Ed Breyton, who also was one of the original founders of the Free Thought Blogs blogging network, a longtime activist in the atheist community. He was on the Atheist Experience with me when he was in town. Whenever he was in Austin, he'd stay at our house. He announced he's been dealing with health issues, serious health issues, for more than a decade, longer than I've known him. And he made a post. I think there's a link that we can post to Haven't Met a Friendly Atheist blog. Essentially, Ed is giving up. It has become much too much for him to handle. And he announced on Facebook last night that he's calling in hospice and wanted to let everybody know that he loves them and that he just can't do this anymore. And so I have a friend of mine who is very likely going to end his own life. And I wanted to take a moment to talk about that I, speaking for myself, support death with dignity, support a right to die. I still think we have a responsibility to to our fellow citizens, to other people that we have to share space with, to make sure that people aren't just willy-nilly running around ending their life, but that there comes a time in some people's life where that seems to be, and likely is, even under medical supervision, the best option for them. I don't know if that's the case for Ed. I don't know if I'll ever see Ed again. I don't know if he will find a way to end his suffering or if he will change his mind. All I want to say is that in all the time that I've been in the atheist community, I can't think of anybody who I respected more and for a longer period of time than Ed Breyton. He was jovial, pleasant, funny as fuck, knowledgeable. His understanding of law, constitution, of the history of the United States is impeccable. His dedication to the cause and the movement put him in positions that other people wouldn't want to deal with, of working back channel, communication stuff or drama with an organization. I never had a conversation with him that I didn't leave happy to have been around him, more knowledgeable than when I started. Even if we were just playing cards, getting ready to, we were constantly talking about going to go playing pro poker tournaments and stuff. I love Ed. I will support whatever decision he makes. I do hope that I get to see him again. And if I don't, then Ed needs to know that I'm dedicating this episode of the Atheist Experience to him. I should probably dedicate many episodes to him, considering what value he's been to the community. and that we seriously wish him well, and that he is loved and valued and will be missed. But, so on that, sorry, Jenna, how are you?
Well, it's interesting that that's the subject you bring up, because the reason that I wasn't on the last show was because I had my first real experience with death and lost somebody very, very close to me who has been monumental in my life for the past couple of years. And so he actually went on hospice, and we lost him July 1st. So amazing man. Very, always, oh my God, like always going outdoors. Sounds like the same kind of guy. Just always, yeah. Anyway, going through that.
Yeah. We'll move on to callers in just a couple of minutes. As a reminder, the Atheist Community of Austin is a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of religion and government. It's a proper 501c3 organization. Any donations you make are tax deductible. But we also work in conjunction with a number of other organizations, including our support and constantly directing people to recovering from religion and the Psychotherapist Project, the Foundation Beyond Belief. And on a side note, I've also been supportive of other organizations like Grief Beyond Belief and things like that. Just remembering that we have a broad community, and that while there may be disagreements or infighting or breakups or divisions that create whole new organizations, we're primarily a volunteer organization. We're primarily a volunteer community. And people like Ed are the reason that I stay positive about what's going on. The various drama that happens or bickering or back and forth, just knowing that there are real people who value real people and are valued by those same people it's enough. And just the other day, somebody, well, I think it was either earlier today or yesterday, I got into a couple of Twitter arguments, but one of them was someone who decided to try to tell me that there is no such thing as an atheist community. And I'm like, hello, I'm currently the president of the Atheist Community of Austin. And while I realize that there's not like a single 100% agreement atheist community, it's undeniable that there are communities of atheists.
Absolutely.
And we're thrilled for everybody joining us this week. Let's take some calls. Maybe we can. All
right. I thought 18 looked really interesting.
And yet I don't see that one.
Oh no.
So it may be that
maybe it
dropped in between, but I'll get a quick refresh. Wow. All
15?
Right. I'm going to take Dennis first.
Okay.
And it's not because of anything that we just talked about, but Dennis in New York, you're on with Jenna and Matt. How are you?
Hey, Jenna. Hey, Matt. How are you?
All right.
It's a rough day, but I'm looking at the bright side as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know the show was going to start off with Ed. I've had a lot of bad experience myself. I don't know if you see what's written down there.
I did. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. So go ahead, tell us your story and what's going on.
Well, I'll make it quick. As far as I was raised a Catholic, at the age of 21, I became a born-again Christian, and I went back and forth to church. 2014, I was diagnosed with CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, but there was a secondary to it. It's called autoimmune hemolytic anemia, which it kills off your hemoglobins. Right. It's an antibody that acts the wrong way. So I didn't even realize that I had cancer. So I landed in the hospital with CLL, but my feeling sick and losing oxygen was from the autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So I'm being told I have cancer, but I have a secondary. And that was very hard to grasp. And here's the kicker. I was watching the Atheist Experience for about 6 months. Some of my Christian friends had come to the hospital, and I confessed to them that maybe God was punishing me. And they told me, well, you shouldn't watch shows like the Atheist Experience because the devil is going to work in your life. And it almost was confirming that God was punishing me for watching the Atheist Experience and getting, falling away from God. So I did go back to church for a little bit. And then as time went on, I started still thinking, I want to watch the Atheist Experience. It makes sense to me. The things that you were saying, Matt, and one of the things is Exodus 21 that stuck in my mind. But I landed in the hospital with 0 platelets. My bone marrow stopped working and it wasn't making platelets anymore. But I also have post-herpetic neuralgia due to shingles. So I landed in the hospital with post-herpetic neuralgia and 0 platelets. When the doctors finally came up with a solution after 7 days of not knowing what to do, my platelets started to rise up. And my Christian friends said that was a miracle from God. But my post-herpetic neuralgia has not been solved. And I came up with the conclusion is because the doctors cannot solve that problem. The doctors can solve the 0 platelet problem, but they cannot solve the post-herpetic neuralgia problem. So that's when I decided, wait a minute, is science catching up to God or is God catching up to science? Because the whole thing was these doctors are able to do certain things, but they're not able to other things. So how could it be a miracle of God that the 0 platelets are risen up? But my worst thing is pain. And when you spoke about Ed, I mean, there are days, I'm telling you, Matt, where I would rather end my life than to live with 24-hour, 7-day pain, 7 days a week pain. Not that I want to end my life. I still can live life, sort of, but I can't do the things that most people do because of the pain.
Yeah, unlike the theists who were trying to tell you that perhaps God is punishing you for watching Atheist Experience, or perhaps watching the Atheist Experience allowed the devil to get into your life. I'm not going to tell you that watching our show is going to either cure you or cause you any illness, because that's a level of bizarre connection that only a theist could actually, or something very close to a theist could actually advocate for. I'm genuinely sorry that you're dealing with all this. And, as somebody who deals with chronic pain, although mine is incredibly mild compared to, what someone like you would go through, I get it. And I'm glad that you are willing to stick it out and that you have kind of found your way through the BS surrounding your diagnosis and are working with doctors to treat what they can treat, both, systematically and conditionally.
Correct.
Or symptomatically, I guess. Not systematically. There we go. But yeah, it's, you reached a point where you stop believing, and yet if you get sick or sicker, then they're going to blame us or the devil. And if you get better, they're going to credit the prayer that they did. In the end, right. The only thing that we can really put any sort of confidence in is the data and the science that works towards curing people and eliminating pain and things like that.
I wonder how much, I guess they don't probably put much thought into this because I didn't used to, but how do we get, from this is a sign to this is a sign from, how do we know this isn't a sign from any other God? Flying spaghetti monster, I don't know. I just don't, you don't believe anymore, correct?
No, I don't, because I see no reason to. Because, like I said, I can't believe in the Bible because to me it's just a bunch of bullshit stories. Right. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, science makes more sense. Adam and Eve doesn't make sense. And if you're Christian, truly, they believe that Jesus mentions as Adam and Eve as truly something that really happened. So if you can't believe in Jesus then if you don't believe in Adam and Eve. So the whole thing doesn't make any sense to me. Lot doesn't make any sense. His daughter's sleeping with him. All this stuff I started learning later on. I was more of a Jesus type of guy. Jesus is a good guy. And I didn't really pay attention to the Old Testament. It kind of just flew over my head. I heard the stories, but it didn't make, it didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was Jesus died on the cross. He rose from the dead, and I have everlasting life. And he chose me. Hallelujah. And the tears would run down my eyes sometimes in church. But when you really analyze it, it's got to be the most vicious book in the world.
I agree.
As far as I'm concerned. I mean,
it's certainly on the top 5.
Genocidal murderer. Yeah. So that's like I lost. Honestly, it's not easy for me because I've lost almost all people that were my Christian friends, and now I know politically you can't speak about it, but I've lost a lot of family friends because of the president of the United States now that's in there. So
yeah,
it's
me
a
too.
lonely life for me.
Yeah.
It's tough, and it's like I think I found that people that don't believe in God and believe that we only have this life seem to be the nicer people because they know, for the most part, I mean, not everybody's nice, but they know that this is the only life we have, so let's make the best of it, opposed to going, well, we'll have a wonderful place paved of gold one day and mansions for ourselves, and it's going to be wonderful, and you'll see your mother and your father and your brother and your sister. That starts really sounding like ridiculous in a fairy tale.
Some of the nicest people I know are religious.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that any group of people is nicer or meaner than another group of people.
Yeah, it's probably a mistake to generalize. Although, if you're in a position like Dennis, where the religious people around you are looking at your condition, and rather than exercising empathy and compassion or trying to tell you that you did something wrong and now God's got it out for you, I can see how that could certainly skew somebody's perception. There are good people who are religious and good people who are not religious, and bad people in both groups as well.
I wonder if you've asked them or thought to ask them how they would feel if they were in your shoes.
Oh, I know what they would say. They would say that I believed in God till the end, but they're not in my shoes.
Yep.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the belief. I'm talking about the situation, the pain that you're in, the suffering. And do you think that you would deserve it if you had this problem?
Well, the post-herpetic neuralgia is probably one of the worst pains known to man. So most people would never experience it. They don't know what it's like.
Don't understand. Yeah.
I'm in pain right now.
I can tell you though,
as I'm speaking to you.
I can tell you though, I have relatives who would absolutely agree with what was said to you, and that they would feel that it was justified to happen to them as well. Because their religion has convinced them so much of this that if they were to do the thing that they think you did, then they would deserve the same sort of punishment and everything else. And plus, this whole life is just a place to wipe your feet before the real life, and so none of this really matters anyway. And let's just shrug it all off. And if God gave you free will and you used it this way, and now you're going to pay for it. It is, even if it were true, it would be repugnant. If there's no reason to think it's true, that makes it even worse. So, for you, Dennis, I don't know, if you have a group or community that you can reach out to, but I'll do what we do most of the time, which is recommend the Recovering from Religion and the Secular Therapist Project. I'd also recommend perhaps reaching out to somebody like Dave Warnock, who's, dying from ALS.
Yeah.
And is, been running around talking about that.
Yes, I know. When I've seen him on the show, I think he seems like such a brave person to know what's happening. But I mean, the end result is we all are going to eventually die. But we want to I want to make the best of it. Even with my pain, I have a wife. I don't have any children, but I have a great loving dog, and I still can't do things. But it's a tough life for me, and I'm not trying to look for any pity or whatever. I'm just saying that I never thought this could happen to me, and it did. And when it does happen to you, you think totally differently about other people that have pain. You go, oh, come on. You know, I knew a guy had arthritis, and I used to say, why is he always complaining about his arthritis? Why don't he just do something? And now I look back and I feel like, wow, you know, it's like I wasn't in his shoes. I didn't know what it was like.
Not to minimize your problem. I mean, like, I can't understand. I'm pretty good at the second I have any kind of pain, I go and I find a way to fix it. And so I can't imagine what it's like for you, but I do struggle with addiction. So I struggle with things that I can't manage. And something that really helped me coming out of rehab was a gratitude list, in that if you're thinking about the things that you're grateful for, it's really hard to think about other things, you know, that are hurting you at the same time. So just, I wonder if that's something you've thought about, if that's worked at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough because it's a constant pain. But
Right.
I'll give you an example. I was always active, and it's taken me 4 weeks to paint 2 doors where I would have finished my whole house. You know, it's that type of thing. And then I hurt for days afterwards. Are you familiar with post-herpetic neuralgia, Matt? Or
No.
Jenna?
I'm not.
Yeah, you should look it up. You'd see it. It's actually after shingles. I caught shingles, and it's, you know, it's like having shingles, but they never go away or get worse.
I'm sorry for mentioning that. Now that I think about it, that it doesn't make sense, because, you know, if you're in constant pain, you know, a gratitude list is, you can't do that constantly. That's not something very plausible.
Right.
Sorry.
And it's not a pain that I can describe, because it's not like a twisted ankle. It's not like getting hit even over the head with a baseball bat. But there's nothing I can do. I have a spinal cord stimulator in my body that didn't work. I went as far as doing that, and that didn't work. I've had epidural injections. I've had, you know, steroid injections and cryo freeze, and you name it, and it just didn't do anything. But the truth is, I'm not that bad where I would want to end my life. But what I worry about is, if I got that bad, if it got worse, if something else got worse in my life with the cancer or whatever, I don't know. I mean, part of me would probably want to end my life, but the other part, like, I want to hang on for other people. But there does come a time. And that's why when you spoke about Ed in the beginning, I was like, I can understand that. I can understand that. And people think it's, what do you call it? What word I'm looking for? A cowardly way out. But I don't think it is. I think it's, if your pain does not stop, what do you got to look forward tomorrow for? More pain?
Yeah. Anybody, you know, granted, I've dealt with people. I know people who think any instance of suicide must be cowardly, and any instance of homelessness must just be laziness. And it's this inability to put yourself in somebody else's position, because you've had a life of privilege and you haven't had to worry about this stuff. I have chronic pain, but I haven't had chronic pain that's more than a mild nuisance for the most part, or an occasional that type of thing. And then I just go on. I can do my best to put myself in the position that somebody else is in. It's one of the reasons why I support a right to die, support death with dignity, not in this willy-nilly, oh, well, let's just end it all. But because we know there are those situations. And I'm very happy that you're not in that exact position, Dennis, but that you've lived with this enough that you can be empathetic to the people who are. We wish you well. Thanks for sharing your story. And, you know, if we can do anything else to help, that'd be great. What's that?
I love you guys, man.
Thank you, Dennis. We love you too. Take care of yourself.
Things get better.
Enjoy your family and your puppers. All right. So let's take an easy call.
30.
Steve in Virginia, you have a question for myself and Jenna, and I think I can answer your question with 2 words. So go ahead. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Matt. Sorry to hear about your friend, and Jenna, sorry to hear that as well. I hope day gets better throughout the week.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. The the reason I'm asking this question is lack of belief. 'Cause I hear this commonly from particularly internet atheists, not you per se, though there are some occasions. But aside from that, my problems with that usage of the word to define atheism. But before going further, I'll say straight off the bat, how you define atheism is polysemous. I'm not going to deny that. But
What? I'm sorry. What was that?
baggage.
There's a number of different ways to define it.
Oh, okay. Go.
Yeah. The issue is if you're going with that, it's going to come with baggage.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't come with any baggage that I can't solve by answering 2 words. What was the question that you told the screener you wanted to ask? Just ask that and I'll answer it.
Okay. If someone's an atheist for the lack of belief in a god or gods, do rocks and other...
Oh my God, that's not what you said you wanted to... So literally what I have here from the call screener is what is lack of belief? And that's easily answerable by 2 words, not convinced. If you want to have a conversation about whether or not rocks are atheist, that's an incredibly stupid conversation. Not your fault. Plenty of atheists engaged in this stupid conversation for the last week, and I stayed out of it. So let's handle it really quickly right now. For any belief position, there's an implicit view and an explicit view. And so a rock is an atheist in the sense that it is implicitly lacking in belief or implicitly does not have belief or is implicitly not convinced. But this is distinct from someone who's an atheist like myself, who is explicitly not convinced, which means that I am an agent who could be convinced and am not convinced. That's what makes me different from a rock. And so for every atheist out there who's trying to run around and say, well, you know, technically rocks are atheists, you're correct. And what you've said is just as fucking useless as anything I've ever heard from a theist. Why are we wasting time with it? Nobody gives a shit about rocks or trees or toenail clippings or anything else. What we're talking about here are people who could be convinced and either are convinced, in which case they're a theist, or are not convinced, in which case they're an atheist. We're talking about explicit atheism. Any conversation about implicit atheism is a monumental waste of my fucking time.
Does that make sense, Steve?
Okay. Yeah, so basically it does require a mental assent from a conscious being.
For explicit atheism, the only thing that I care to discuss, yes, it requires a conscious agent who remains unconvinced.
Okay. Yeah, so say I mirror the exact same argument with theism and define it as a lack of belief in the non-existence of the deity.
That's patently absurd. That's a semantic, useless game, because what we do in logic is we evaluate propositions. There is a proposition, some God exists. That is the proposition that we're evaluating. And if you accept it, you're a theist. And if you don't accept it, you're a non-theist or an atheist in the weak sense. To say that the default proposition is no gods exist and theists are just rejecting that is not only dishonest, it is absurd, because it fails to understand where the default position should be on an existential claim and what the null hypothesis should be. So you can't say theism is a lack of belief in the assertion that there is no God. That's a load of crap.
Well, then would you then say atheism is the belief that there are no gods?
No, atheism is not a belief that there are no gods. That's what I told you. Atheism is not being convinced that there is a God.
Some people, I think, would say that is the definition. But in this case, the way that Matt and I use it, we don't use it that way.
I happen to be convinced, in fact, that there are no gods, but my atheism is just a lack of being convinced that there are.
So you believe the proposition P as in theism is false?
No, some people will.
I personally do. I personally do. But
Okay.
that's not what atheism is.
Well, if you believe the proposition theism is false, then that does entail you believe in its negation is true. I'm describing what I think, which is separate from atheism. I happen to be an anti-theist. I happen to be a strong atheist, a hard atheist, someone who is in fact convinced that there are no gods. But that goes beyond the simplistic definition of atheism. So when I tell you what I believe, I'm not saying this is what atheism is. I'm saying this is what Matt believes. Okay, so atheism in a strong sense is to believe the negation proposition that there are no gods, and weak
Correct.
atheism is just
No.
convinced or
No. You just confused theism and atheism. So try again.
No, I didn't, because you
did. You said atheism is the belief in the proposition that there are no gods, or the rejection of the proposition.
But you said you're a strong atheist, and that goes back to the distinction between weak and strong atheism.
Sure, but the distinction between weak and strong atheism is that weak atheism is the rejection of P, and strong atheism would be the acceptance of not P, where P is some God exists.
Okay, but that's where I kind of see the problem, because agnostics, apatheists, atheists, and agnostics, and theological non-cognitivists, they all did not believe P. But
correct. They are all atheists, whether they like using the label or not.
But they don't take but neither do they take a position on negative P.
I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter.
They don't take P.
There's no middle ground between accepting P and not accepting P. There is a middle ground between accepting P and accepting not P. There is a middle ground between that.
Wait, can you explain that?
So if P is proposition, some God exists, there's no middle ground between accepting that position and not accepting that position.
Right.
But there is a middle ground between accepting that position and accepting the opposite, that no gods exist.
Right, kind of like I'm somewhere in between, but leaning
Right.
more this way, I see.
Because in logic, we address a single proposition. It's a mistake to try to address two propositions at once.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's two propositions. There's P and not P.
Yeah, but not P is something that you can't demonstrate, which is why it's the null hypothesis. It's the same reason that we begin with a presumption of innocence in a courtroom, because innocence may be impossible to demonstrate, and guilt is what we need to demonstrate. So in the question of existence of a being or an entity or a rock or anything else, the presumption is that it does not exist until such time as there is evidence for its existence.
Well, hold on, because atheism and theism are both metaphysical propositions, meaning they can be neither demonstrated true or false empirically or under
No. Theism meets that description. Not accepting theistic propositions, soft atheism, is not itself a proposition.
Well, if atheism is defined in terms of theism and it's its negation, then
No, it's not its negation. I've just explained this to you like 3 or 4 fucking times now. Atheism is not the negation of theism. It is the not accepting theism.
Then
Anti-theism is what I'm using as the label for actively saying P is false.
So he is an atheist, but he happens to also be an anti-theist.
Yeah, I can see that distinction, because I've heard others describe theists as anti-theists in some sense or form. I don't know if you agree with that, but
Doesn't matter. It's really easy.
Do you understand the concept?
If you have a proposition P, some God exists. If you accept it, you're a theist. If you do not accept it, you're an atheist or a non-theist or weak atheist. If you go a step further, whether you want to call that anti-theism, strong atheism, whatever, and you are convinced that P is false, that's something else in addition.
Okay, so you have the proposition, and propositions are something to be believed. So, and there's usually in epistemology, from my understanding, 3 doxastic attitudes: belief, disbelief, or withhold of judgment. So,
okay, so that's so I hold that there's only 2. Disbelief is not belief in the contrary. Disbelief is not non-belief. You either believe or you do not believe. That is true for every proposition. There is no middle ground. You either are convinced or you are not convinced. There is no middle ground. There can be no middle ground between being convinced and not being convinced.
If you don't know, then you are not convinced.
okay, so say there's a proposition that Trump is a good Christian, and I reject that. Does that entail I believe that claim to be false?
You would have to tell me, what do you mean when you say you reject it? Because it could be that you could mean that you are not convinced that the claim is true, and you could mean that you're convinced that the claim is false. So you would have to tell me which one you intend to be saying.
Okay, to be more precise, I disbelieve that claim because and that entails me believing that claim to be false.
So you're using disbelief in a way that entails you believing it's false. I don't use disbelief in that way, but now I at least understand that what you're saying is you are actively convinced that Trump is not a good Christian. Okay, now we understand. It was really easy. You described how you were using a term, and now that I know how you're using a term, we can talk about it in that way. I'm not using that term in that way. If I say that I do not believe something, that is not me saying I believe that is false. If I'm saying I disbelieve something in the sense of I am not convinced, I am not asserting that it is false. If I believe something is false, I would just say that. I would say, I believe Christianity isn't true. I believe Trump is a shitty Christian. I believe Trump is a shitty president. I believe Trump, well, let's just not keep going on and on and on. But no matter what the position is, if I believe a proposition, I would always want to express that in terms of I accept a proposition is true or likely true.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if you're using atheism in the sense like that you're just not convinced, oh, sorry, I hit that, then the theists can reply in the same stance that they're not convinced of a God's non-existence.
Yes, okay. And I already explained to you why that's stupid.
Well, if you think that's stupid, that is kind of special pleading.
No, it's not special pleading. What it is something I've explained about 500 times, including in special videos. Saying that being a theist just means you're not convinced of God's non-existence, means you don't understand the nature of evidence, the burden of proof, the null hypothesis, or why we set up certain positions as defaults until something is demonstrated. Because if you were a theist and all it meant for you was that you're not convinced that God doesn't exist, then you would have to be in a position where you would be accepting multiple different God claims at the same time. And that puts you in a position of cognitive dissonance where you would be accepting mutually exclusive things. And that's why skepticism teaches us that what we do is we withhold our belief until such time as it is warranted by evidence.
I need to ask a question.
Yep.
Steve?
Sure.
Are you trying to understand what we think or how we believe, or are you trying to prove us wrong?
I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, and as regards to my earlier question about rocks, but Matt, disregard that. But more specifically, trying to understand where Matt and you, Jenna, are coming from.
Do you understand? Do you believe me when I say that I don't believe in a God? I just don't believe you. When you say there's a God out there and he thinks and does this, do you believe me when I say I don't believe you?
I'm compelled to believe you, although I'd dig a little further to, okay, but what is your position?
I just don't have one.
She just told you.
Hold on. I just don't have one. Do you understand that? I just don't believe it. Like it stops there.
Like if Jenna tells you that she does not believe in a God and then says, do you accept that I'm telling you the truth? Why is that a difficult question? You either accept that she's telling the truth or you don't.
Well, because I understand, because it's hard to understand that that's possible. Because I had trouble. I wouldn't have believed somebody if they had said that to me.
Yeah, but when I was at a point where I wouldn't have believed somebody like that, like you see from Psy and others, I would have just asserted that they do know. So,
well, but he seems to be trying to understand.
So yeah, let's redo this Jenna's question and just do it for both of us. But I'll let Jenna ask, which is, you are convinced that a God exists, and we are both telling you we are not convinced that a God exists.
And that's our position stops there. And
it will stop there. Do you believe that we're being honest about our position?
Yeah, I see where you're coming with the not convinced part, but I guess what I'm trying to ask for more specificity, like, do you believe the proposition is?
How could you possibly be more specific other than to say, I am not yet convinced of this proposition? And I know I can give more, which is I'm not convinced of the theistic proposition because no one has presented sufficient evidence to believe in any of those. And it flies in the face of the fact that there are competing claims about theistic propositions. Not only is there not sufficient evidence to believe, but there is evidence strongly against fundamental things that are tied to theism.
Mm-hmm. Like, are you talking about scientific evidence or?
Yes.
What do you mean exactly? Well,
the notion of a soul is the single most obviously dead and false concept in all of theology. Every single thing that anyone could identify or claim is part of a soul is identifiable as a function of a brain, and it is malleable within a living, healthy brain. It can be altered and changed as brains are damaged, and there is zero evidence of anything that about my identity which persists beyond my death.
Mm-hmm.
And any religion that has a notion of a soul as a foundational element of that religion is flying in the face of the scientific evidence. And so they would need to find a way, a defeater for this understanding of identity that is that conflicts with the soul, and present evidence that there is one. And they don't do that.
Can you understand that there's like there's a God, okay, I don't believe you. And then you go even further to say, and I know that the God's a dude and the God exists for this long and he believes in this and he wants me to do this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I don't even believe this thing exists in the first place. Is your confusion that you don't understand what I believe is there instead?
No, I'm trying to word it right. When you say you're not convinced, it's just to somebody like me and say others who are delving into either philosophy or epistemology or what have you.
Steve,
do you think that we haven't studied it yet?
Steve, do you think the Loch Ness Monster is real?
No.
So you are not convinced of the Loch Ness Monster. Are you convinced that the Loch Ness Monster is a fiction?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. What reason do you have for that?
Have you done research into that?
The reason I believe there's no such thing as a Loch Ness Monster because there has been no discovery of it. There's no science. There's been no observation even there. So I have to reject that as false.
So because you don't have evidence for something, you think it's okay to conclude that it's false. So have you heard of like the black swan fallacy?
Yeah, it's been a minute, but
sure. So up until a certain period of time, all the swans we'd ever seen were white. And based on your reasoning, it would be okay to conclude that there are no black swans. And then all of a sudden, we found a black swan. And so that demonstrates that there were black swans. So the fallacy was in concluding that there weren't something just because you hadn't seen evidence for it. However, while that is in fact a fallacy, you are in a position where you're willing to do it for the Loch Ness Monster. So why is it a problem for you that I do it for God? Jenna doesn't do that for God. Jenna's just still not convinced. She's not saying there is no God. She's just saying, hey, much like the Loch Ness Monster, there isn't good evidence for this.
All right, so I call myself an agnostic atheist, meaning I don't know, but I don't think so.
Well, would you agree that knowledge is a subset of belief?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if atheism is not believing God exists, but agnostic is withholding of judgment on either P or not P, that just sounds a little strange to me. Maybe
think about it for a little while.
Well, no, so Steve's not entirely wrong. The agnostic atheist definition, or that particular combination, is garbage. Because it's asserting that you don't have knowledge about something that's not a belief. It is not a real thing. But what is real is that if someone were anti-theist and an agnostic anti-theist like that, that would make more sense.
How can you be agnostic anti-theist? Like, I'm strongly against something that I don't believe in, but I can't say I don't know, but I don't think so.
Agnostic is not strongly against. Agnostic is about knowledge.
No, anti-theist is.
so anti-theism, as I'm using it, is
strongly disbelieve.
yeah. So anti-theism, as I'm using it, is disbelieves the proposition. Well, not just disbelieves the proposition. Believes proposition is false, accepts not P. Anyway, we're way far afield here, Steve, because you think there's a God. I don't. Jenna doesn't. I actually go a step further, and I think there are no gods. How convinced am I? I'm not certain. I'm not certain of anything. But I don't know why this can be confusing to you, because you're not only not convinced there's not that there is a Loch Ness monster, you're convinced there isn't when you've done no research and haven't investigated, haven't been able to go. Like I bet you haven't even been to the Loch.
I think the flying spaghetti monster might be a good example.
Yeah, no, except we know that was an invented fiction.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyway, I'm not going to keep going through this basic atheism 101 definitions. We're going to move on, Steve.
Thanks for trying, Steve. Maybe call back after you think on it for a while.
Yeah, the whole, is it lack of belief, whatever. So the point that he was getting to, which is real, is if you're a theist, you accept a proposition, and the proposition is some God exists. And because now you have a belief, a positive belief, and knowledge is a subset of belief, you can discuss whether or not your belief rises to the level of knowledge. If you just lack a belief, well, then there's no positive proposition there to consider for agnosticism, which is why the agnostic label is incredibly problematic, which is one of the reasons why I stopped using it. And I talk about, well, for me, it wouldn't be as problematic because it's true. I'm an agnostic anti-theist, but I am convinced there are no gods, but I'm not going to claim to know there are no gods.
I see.
Yeah, I'm
so I can't say I don't know, but I don't know.
And that's separate from whether or not I'm certain, because certainty isn't a requirement for knowledge either. But
okay, all right.
Anyway, we've got Alex in Florida. You're on with Jenna and Matt. How are you?
Hi, Jenna and Matt. I'm good. How are you?
All right.
Not bad. How can we help?
Oh man, there's a lot on my mind, but I guess where I want to start is I guess it's important to define God, first of all, because everyone has their own perception of who or what that is.
Wow, I should send you a prize for being one of the first and only people to ever call in and say, I'd like to start by defining God.
Oh yeah, you're going to love this conversation, man.
Oh, I like it already.
Okay, so let's start with the Big Bang, okay? Because that's what everyone wants to go to when you ask, okay, how did the universe...
Hang on.
How did this all...
Hang on, Alex. You can't tell me that you want to start by defining God and that I'm going to love the conversation, and then the next words out of your mouth are, let's start with the Big Bang.
Well, I'm just using this as an example to get to my point real quick.
I thought we were defining God.
Oh, we are. Just give me 1 second here. So...
One Mississippi.
People say, oh, well, the Big Bang, okay? So you have all the matter condensed into itself, and boom. Okay, well, before the compression, there was matter, and there was existence, and there were processes making the compression happen.
Alex?
Before the bang. Okay?
Alex?
You have something already existing.
Alex?
Yes, sir?
You have a fundamental misunderstanding of Big Bang cosmology. It's not like matter existed in an uncompressed state, and then suddenly it was compressed. The breakdown in our understanding would hold that the matter existed and was compressed all the way up until the Big Bang event. So it's not like something comes in and compresses the matter and then it decompresses. So already you've got a fundamental misunderstanding of Big Bang cosmology, and you haven't gotten anywhere near a definition of God. So I'm not enjoying this conversation nearly as much as you thought I would.
I'm disappointed, man.
The point is that matter already existed before the Big Bang.
Who knows?
Okay, so what? What the hell does that have to do with a God or a definition of a God?
Okay, my definition of God is something that is eternally existing. And if something is eternally existing, it is probably infinitely powerful.
No, fucking no. The fact that something exists forever doesn't mean that it doesn't tell you how powerful it is at all. That is a complete non sequitur. You pulled that right out of your ass.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I'm just speculating. Okay.
I don't care about speculation. I got plenty of other callers waiting on hold, and some of them are willing to define a God. So we're going to move on. Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't get that till afterwards. But if you're going to call in and tell me you're going to define God, and then you're going to get Big Bang wrong, and then you're going to claim that because something existed eternally that it must be infinitely powerful, come on.
Do you want to do like a challenge for the rest of the show that like the first person that can actually define God first thing gets a prize?
I don't know what prize we get, but
Don't get hung up on.
but we've got a caller from Australia, and I will let you steer this one so that I don't hang up before you're ready to do so. But we've got William in Australia. You're on with Jenna.
Hey, William, what's up?
Hey, what's up? Hey, I'm good. I wanted to talk about experiences I've had for quite some time now where I've seen certain signs that seem to relate to a family member that has passed away.
Okay.
So, this was actually a really long time ago. So in 2006, my grandfather passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Before you get into a story, what do we get? What are you going to explain to me?
Explaining that. So I've each time I see a certain species of like a butterfly, it kind of relates to like an emotional connection to my grandfather. And I just wanted to ask if there's any sort of just to debate where if that would be true or not. Just asking.
A debate of whether or not the vision that you're seeing is actually your grandfather?
Yeah, it kind of started off my nan, who's she's not religious, but she's spiritual in a sense, and after the death occurred, she was of course devastated, and she would pray to my grandfather to let her know that he was somehow still around. And after this happened, she kept on seeing black and white butterflies, the same species of butterflies in all these different locations a lot more often than she used to. And
Did she?
Personally,
Did she see it more often, or was she primed to remember seeing it more often? And why would seeing a specific species of butterfly why would anybody conclude that this is somehow a message from the dead?
I'm not too sure. I just wanted to see your 2 cents on it. That's all. That's the reason I called.
So I've actually had a very similar experience the past. So I told you I just recently lost somebody, and I've been spending more time with family, and somebody that's been close to this person also has been finding footprints on the deck, and they'll just pop up in the morning. And I understand that it's completely natural to want to believe that when you lose somebody that they're still there with you. I don't understand. Well, I guess I do. So it's what I try to do is I try to accept that I can still keep that person with me just in my memories. I can just think of that person, and then I symbolically kind of have them with me. But what we think is that it's actually just somebody sprayed bug spray over their leg, over the deck, and then the dew from the night just kind of made it stand out. Just there are things like that can happen, that your mind wants that person to be there, and so they're going to try to find reasons to believe that they are. And so I understand the psychological need, but after you look into this kind of thing and you study it and you learn more about it, it begins to make a lot more sense why people believe this stuff, and it's a comfort to me, at least. I don't know if that helps at all.
No, it's fine. Yeah. The only reason I believe it is that it's comforting. I never really sit down and really think about it in depth, because you could overthink this, and you could get into like a giant rabbit hole. But
you could learn more about it.
Believed it. Yeah,
you can find out.
Yeah. I have had this belief for many years now, but I've kind of gone to the moment now that I'm really starting to sit down and think of whether this is actually true, because every time I see a butterfly now, I feel that connection, and I think it might not be true. So that
Might
was
not be-
the reason.
Might not be-
Why would that be a problem? So
Yeah, it's okay to feel that connection.
yeah, I mean, like, I wish, granted, I don't see like butterflies all that often. But if I did see butterflies and they reminded me of someone that I had lost that I cared about, then I'd just be glad that now I have something that reminds me of them. It's not like I have to think that I'm getting a message from them or anything else. It's just enough for me to go, oh yeah, that reminds me of grandma. It's like whenever I hear somebody sneeze multiple times, achoo, 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 that will forever be what my grandma does. I heard somebody do it at an airport, and I just wanted to run over to them and go, oh my gosh, that's exactly the way my grandmother used to sneeze. And I didn't for a second think that my grandmother had like possessed this woman and made her sneeze in a weird fashion. Why isn't the fact that you're remembering stuff and you value them and you have memories, why can't that be enough?
Can you say that again? So this is just a memory thing, or?
Well, I don't have any evidence that my grandmother possessed someone at the airport, and you don't have any evidence that your grandfather is somehow manipulating or sending butterflies. But shouldn't it just be enough that the butterflies remind you of someone you cared about?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely more than enough.
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
Okay.
Thanks, William.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt. All right. See ya.
Cheers. Well, you should probably thank Jenna since she did all the heavy lifting there, and I just showed up at the end to clean up. I'm going to...
30 looks good.
That's actually the one I just clicked on. Guillermo in California, how are you? You're on with Jenna and Matt.
Hey, hello, Matt.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question. Like, how come you guys believe in world history and you don't believe in biblical history?
Because I believe in whatever world history actually is supported by the best available evidence, and biblical history isn't that. The Bible's not a history book, even though it includes historical claims. It'd be like me saying, it would be like me writing an autobiography that says, hey, I was born in 1969, I graduated high school in 1987, I saw an alien spacecraft in 1989, I can raise the dead, men are inferior to women, don't eat shrimp. That's not a history of me, just because a couple of things in there are accurate.
Okay, but in history books, we see things that we don't know of. I mean, that we have no proof of. But
like what?
And
I don't count the Bible as a history book.
Do you think that we find history books and then go back and try to verify everything that we find in them?
No, but because sometimes there's proof.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Has the Bible got proof for the things that I reject? Because I haven't seen it.
Well, the Tower of David and...
The Tower of David?
That's the thing.
Hang on. The Tower of David? What Tower of David? I'm not familiar with that story.
Wait, Tower of Babel, I'm sorry.
Oh, the Tower of Babel. You mean that obviously fictional story that could not possibly be true? That at one point in time, the entire earth was of one language and they all got together and said, hey, let's never leave each other. Let's build a city with a tower in it. And then God supposedly came down and confounded their language. That obviously bullshit story. You want to put that up as if it's history? What's the evidence for it?
Oh, it's in the Bible.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Why should we believe the Bible?
Because that's history.
No,
But
it's
says
not.
who? Hold on, says who?
Go ahead.
What?
Like, if I were to find a history book on a table, I just find a history book, does that mean that everything in that book is true? Because I said it's history.
Supposedly, I believe.
Why would you just accept anything that I have to say?
I don't know. I'm just saying because everything I learned in school, like every kid is taught in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's up to them to verify if it's true.
Right.
Well, actually, in elementary school, we should not be teaching that the Bible is true or a history book. That's actually against the law.
I didn't hear that you said that they were teaching the Bible. I heard that they were teaching you that they give you information and they're teaching you to verify that this information is true before you believe it, right? So you've gone through and verified everything in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you've been to Babel?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really. Yeah, I know that because it didn't exist.
No. Those are kind of like metaphoric.
I was one of those.
You know what history books don't tend to contain? Metaphor, simile, dragons, moral instructions. Those things aren't part of history books. History books tell you about history.
That's why. Yeah, the book of Revelation is like an acid trip.
Yes.
And that's proof that it's a history book?
Actually, that's a future book, but
Right.
But still, there's things in the Bible that are true.
yes, there are.
There are also things in Harry Potter that are true.
That list of 6 things I read to you, 2 of them were true. But that doesn't tell you whether the other 4 were. Do you think I can raise the dead?
Maybe.
Really?
No.
Okay.
Do you really believe that?
No.
No, but that's the thing is we're not playing games. Like, we're being serious. We really don't believe it.
I know that. But okay.
And we don't know why you do.
No, I don't believe it.
Do you
You
like
don't believe the
shrimp?
Bible? You don't believe the Bible?
Wait. Oh, yes, I do. I mean,
Okay.
I do, but like I say, a lot of it are metaphors.
How am I supposed to know which one's a metaphor or not?
Because it's common sense.
I don't believe that. I don't do very well with common sense.
You started this conversation by claiming that the Tower of Babel was real and historical, and then when I pointed out that was ridiculous, then you wanted to claim it's metaphor. So if it's a metaphor, how did we actually get different languages?
Because my wife goes to my wife studied the Bible a lot, and she's told me that God, like, as a punishment for all the people, he gave us like a curse so everybody wouldn't understand each other.
Why should anybody believe your wife?
Because it's not her words. Those words are in the Bible.
No,
Do you believe
they're
in
not.
curses? Do you believe in curses?
Curses?
Curses.
No, now I don't.
So why
So
would
your
you believe
wife
that?
wasn't telling you the truth?
I know that back in the Bible days, everything was different.
So you think that curses used to exist, but now they don't?
I know that there's stories of witches, and I don't know about that either.
How do we find out?
But, huh?
How do we find out?
What was? Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah is not an answer to Jenna's question. Jenna's asking you, how would you go about finding out the truth?
Hey, how do we find out if there actually used to be witches? Like, so in the old days, they actually did believe in witches, and they actually killed people because they believed that they were witches. Actually, this is a fascinating, it's actually went on a long time, but how do we know if they were or were not witches?
And specifically, Jenna's asking, how could we tell if they had some sort of magical powers? Because we understand there are people who identify and label themselves witches right now. But if the purpose is to identify a witch who has powers,
Right. Like that has a voodoo doll that can actually manipulate physics and do magic.
yeah, how would we demonstrate that?
I have no clue.
Yeah. Maybe you should stop believing things that you don't have a clue in how you could possibly test. Maybe you should just say, until such time as there's actual good evidence for it, I won't believe that.
Okay, then I guess you got me again.
Okay.
Okay, then. All right, Matt.
Thanks, Guillermo.
Thanks. That was fun.
Yeah. And a little unusual.
My goal is not to get people.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a conversation, and if there's a fallacy, cool. And if it turns out you've got actually good evidence for something, cool. Why would I not want to do that? But if you're calling in just so that I can get you, well, that's really easy. If you call in with like, I don't know, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Maybe I shouldn't believe it. Maybe I shouldn't listen to my wife. Maybe I shouldn't just accept that every book I've been told is true is true.
That's the thing is I used to hear things like that and I would just be like, oh, okay. And I just wouldn't think about it anymore. But now I've learned that when I hear something like that, I should sit and think about it a little bit longer and break it down and try to actually investigate it if it's something that I want to believe. And even more, if it's something that I want to actually base my actions in my life on.
Yeah.
So when you say that my wife said this and therefore I believe it, and then you're like, oh, but I don't really believe in curses. Well, then you don't really believe it.
So we got Mike in Washington. You're on with Jenna and Matt. How are you?
Hi, Mike.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
All right.
All right. How can we help?
All right. So let me pull up my notes here. I was trying to rephrase the actual question because it's not exactly what I wanted to get on.
Ooh.
So the thing I apologize. So the thing that I wanted to get in is because I'm a Christian, I identify as a Christian. When I read the Bible, I can see a lot of hypocrisies in there, and I can see there's a lot of like back and forth. And so when I get into conversations with fellow Christians, they I wanted to know what is a good way to get what is a good example to get fellow Christians or other Christians to admit hypocrisies within the Bible?
Why is that your goal?
I apologize. I wasn't trying to interrupt anybody else. It's just that. Well, go ahead and answer Jenna's question.
Well, if that's not where you want to go with it, that's fine. But I'm curious. Why is that? Why are you trying to do that?
No, I think it's a great question.
Well, so when I read the Bible, like if you're looking in Leviticus and they're talking about slavery, like Leviticus 25, how you can own other slaves, like as long as they're not part of Israel. And then like indentured servants and all of that for 6 years. And then after that, or 7 years. And then after that, if they get their own land, like I talked with that about people and they're like, oh, well, the Bible doesn't condone slavery. And so like my thing is like, I can definitely read the Bible objectively, see that there are hypocrisies within it, still make my own decision to choose to believe in the God of the Bible. And still understand that there are these hypocrisies, that it's not perfect, and that it almost seems more, when you think about the God of the Old Testament, it seems more like it is a more human God, human in the sense that he's filled with rage, there's anger, there's jealousy, there's all these other emotions that are there. Whereas the God of the New Testament is very loving and forgiving and just love everyone. And when
there's two gods?
Discuss that with fellow Christians. I'm sorry?
There's two different gods?
No. It seems like he had a, like he changed his view, right? Like his thoughts on stuff. Like he was about genocides and there were sacrifices and tons of other things. And then now when you go into the New Testament, it's very much like, oh, love thy neighbor.
I'm so confused why you're convinced that the Leviticus part is bad and you're trying to convince your friends that it's bad, but you're also trying to defend it at the same time. It's interesting to me.
This is why I laughed at the outset. Because first of all, you called me, and I will go ahead and declare myself as the king of using slavery against Christians.
Right.
To ask how to convince Christians to recognize problems with that, when clearly I've failed. I've stood next to four reasonably well-known apologists who all gave 4 different apologetics for slavery. And I said, well, you guys go talk it and sort it out. When you figure out what the one right answer is, you come back to me. But what's confusing to me is it's so obvious that the God character in the Old Testament is different from the God character in the New Testament. You recognize this, but you want to find a way to reconcile it. Why do you need to reconcile it? The Jews don't need to reconcile it. They just say Christianity is not true.
Right. And so I feel like when I talk to other Christians about it, they try to flip-flop on that subject. They're like, okay, well, if we're taking the New Testament God, and we're going with Jesus, like he is the way, the truth, the life, and that's what we're trying to do. And
but that Jesus is still fine with slavery, and so is Paul.
It sounds to me like that's what you're doing, though.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It kind of sounds to me like that's what you're doing.
What reason do you have to think that any version of the God character from the Old or New Testament is actually real? And why, just to add a little mud here, why, if that God is real, are you having to call a bunch of atheists to talk about how to convince other Christians of the thousands of different denominations about which of the gods is real?
Well, it's more not about proving that God is real. It's just about understanding the hypocrisies within the Bible. I feel like
I don't care. So you might as well be, Mike, if you don't care whether or not it's real, Mike,
I'm sorry?
if you don't care whether or not the God is real, what difference does it make if there's hypocrisy in the book? There's hypocrisy in all kinds of books. You could be saying, hey, I'm a Christian, but let's talk about why there's hypocrisy in the Bhagavad Gita, or why there's hypocrisy in the Quran. But
Are your
instead you're talking about,
pro-slavery?
what's that?
Are your friends pro-slavery? Is that why you're so concerned about this?
Are they? No. They're not for slavery. But they try to use, I feel like, Christianity when we all talk about it, or like my friends and I or other individuals talk about it. They like, I can wholeheartedly say that I believe that the God of the Bible is real due to my own personal experiences, supernatural, whatever you may call it.
That's what we want to talk about. We want to know why you believe it's real.
I mean, this is so you're convinced that it's real, and yet what?
Sorry.
So you're convinced that wholeheartedly, because of experiences you've had, that the God of the Bible is real. And so I'm interested in hearing what that experience is and why it convinced you, but also why it is that you are now, because of personal experience, convinced that a God is real, and yet somehow unable to get answers from this God in a way that are of any use to you. And so when you go through the Bible and you decide that the slavery passages aren't really representing God.
Right.
And you might go through and you might say, you know what, the anti-homosexual passages, those aren't really representing God either. Or the ones about eating shrimp, those aren't really representing God. And you can go through and you can make a list and you can decide for yourself which ones don't represent God. But if that's the case, aren't you just inventing the God that you believe in? Why isn't your God giving you these answers?
Like, don't you realize that you're the one ultimately that's picking what to believe and what not to believe? You're the one that's doing it?
Absolutely. And I'm all about understanding that I'm cherry picking the Bible to my own sense to understand it and to go into that. But when I speak with other Christians myself, like they don't acknowledge the cherry picking.
Okay, so you're more honest than the rest of them. But if your honesty doesn't get you to so like, I guess, and I know you didn't call in for this, but can you give us one personal experience that convinced you that a God exists, so that I have some, I don't know, something to assess here?
Yes. So, and again, this is my own experience. I can realize that there are definitely another option as to why it was. When I was younger, my friend and I, we were skateboarding and we were walking home, or skateboarding home from the park. And we were on this massive four-way intersection where it was in Phoenix, Arizona, where I lived. And it was like just pretty much like open land, no fields, no nothing, no houses, no nothing, just fields. When we were going past a little bit on I guess like the northeast corner, there was a row of houses where we were going to. When we got to this intersection, we saw this beautiful woman, like she was in white attire, like just gorgeous, like radiant woman. She was walking opposite of us. So if we were going north, she was going west, or I guess parallel to us, whatever you would want to call it. So we were going that. We were on the skateboards. We were like, oh man, she was beautiful. We should go and see that again. So as we decided to turn around, as we were doing that and coming through, a car who was coming the opposite direction of us, or coming from the direction we were going, like lost control, went into a house, crashed, and had we not turned around, that would have been us. That would have been hit instead of the row of houses. And when we went to try to find that woman that we were looking for to begin with, she was gone. Like we couldn't see her. We didn't we didn't know what was going on. So I attributed that to an angel who looked out for me, or like got our attention and kind of brought us out of that.
Sure. So you had a close call.
All I understand.
You had a close call, and you decided it was an angel.
Yeah. And while I understand like that is illogical when it goes into it, I believe that because of how I was raised, or everything that I went into Christian-wise going into it,
Okay.
I believe
If you had been raised differently, do you think that you would have reached a different conclusion?
perhaps. Absolutely.
Okay.
Like,
So if the primary criteria about the conclusion you reached is how you were raised, what does that say about what you understand about the actual event?
I mean, yeah, it definitely shapes my worldview for sure.
So have you ever heard of the butterfly effect?
Earlier today.
Like, you know how it's, yeah, basically if you just kind of rewind, you can see why everything happens, right? Like this caused this, which caused this, which caused this, right?
Right.
Right. And so if you want to look at anything, you can look at any accident that happens within the time frame that you leave between here and work and say, oh, if I had left this much earlier, or oh, if I had left this much later, then I could have blah, blah, blah. You could find tragedy anywhere you look. It just depends on what you're looking for. And so I understand, like, yeah, that could have been you, but it also could have been somebody else if it was a millisecond later. It also could have been somebody else if it was another millisecond later, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Why didn't the woman in white stop the car accident entirely?
And why didn't she tell you she's an angel after? Say hi.
I mean, if God's going to provide you with evidence, why not provide you with evidence rather than just making it a suspicion? So like, you're not even necessarily convinced that God exists. You just seem to have a suspicion that God exists.
And then this is where it definitely gets hard, because I have the suspicion, and then I feel like I have the conviction that he exists. Even though, like, rationally, when I think about it, like, I can look at stuff and be like, oh, there's definitely not proof, but there's.
Why doesn't God clear this up for you? Why doesn't God clear this up for you? If God is real and your belief in him is real and your devotion to God is sincere, then you should just be able to ask God to demonstrate this so that you're no longer confused or concerned.
Right. That would send out warning signs for me.
Definitely. I feel like it goes back to the choice of given free will. Like, when we're out here, my personal belief is more deistic.
Mike.
Stuff out.
Mike.
Yes.
Do you also believe in Satan?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. And so does Satan absolutely know that God exists? Has Satan been in God's presence?
Yes.
And Satan rebelled against God?
Yes.
So your free will argument's a load of crap, because God could definitely confirm to everyone on the planet that he exists and is real, and people could still exercise that free will to not believe, correct? Or to not worship.
Absolutely.
So there's no reason for God to not answer your questions. You're just coming up with excuses for God. Why does God need you to come up with excuses for him?
I feel like if he is a truly omnipotent being and omnipresent, like everything, like, and all powerful, like, he probably doesn't. It's just, if anything, like, he wants us to go off of faith, which I understand.
Why?
A load of crap anyways.
Well, yeah, because is there any couldn't I believe any religion based on faith?
Absolutely.
Can we say it feels like anything?
I mean, it just feels like I'm desperately trying to ask questions that get us closer. And from what I get from your story is you had an experience, a close call. You decided that it was an angel based on how you were raised. You haven't bothered to put any of this to the test, and instead you've come up with excuses why this shouldn't or can't be put to the test, because it somehow violates free will even though it doesn't, or God is so omnipotent that he doesn't care. But if you believe that God cares and loves people, do you think that God wants me to know he exists?
My personal belief, and I'm sounding like an idiot as I speak, and I apologize. My personal belief on it would be that God would want everyone to come to know that he exists.
Okay.
If we do not, it's kind of like, and I don't want to be like cavalier or like nonchalant about it, but like he's like, whatever, it is what it is, kind of a thing.
So he's like Trump.
Like it's like,
it is what it is.
He stole that from me.
Sure. Essentially.
So that if you think that God wants everybody to know he exists, why didn't he prepare you better to come up with something that could demonstrate it to us? Why is it that through my entire life and through the lives of many other people who've lived over centuries, people have lived and died their entire lives and not been presented with any evidence? You have thousands of denominations amongst many different religions, all making different claims about God. And God seems to be completely absent, unable to come in and clarify any confusion, unwilling to come in and offer any evidence. Is that more consistent with a God that doesn't fucking exist or a God that does?
Right. Yeah, I would definitely say if you're going at it from that point of view, it's more consistent with a God that doesn't exist.
I said it doesn't fucking exist, but I'll excuse you because I'm a little freer with the F word.
May I ask you a favor?
Absolutely.
It sounds to me like you're on an honest journey trying to figure this stuff out. It sounds to me like you feel like it's real, but it doesn't really make sense. And so you're willing to open up your mind and ask different people their perspectives. And that's exactly what I did. And I applaud you for that. But I would ask that you pay attention to when you give reasons for things that begin with "it feels like," because "it feels like" can mean something completely different from me to you, let alone the billions of other people there are and have been. And that has nothing to do with what is actually true. What is actually true is why we have developed the scientific method, is to try to figure out what's actually true, because everybody feels like something different. So whenever you base your entire worldview on what feels like it's true rather than what you've investigated and learned about, I would just recommend that you investigate further.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, I can definitely, like, if I were to take emotion out of it and look at it like rationally, I can definitely see, there's hypocrisies here. This would kind of like turn me off of it. Just like if I were to look when I read into Mormonism or Jehovah's Witnesses and all of that stuff, like when I read it, I'm like, okay, this obviously seems false, or looks to be false based off of everything. So
it's not obvious to everyone
within Christianity as well. So I definitely see that within the Christian faith as well. I just find that I can identify and say that there are these hypocrisies. And the reason I wanted to speak with Matt specifically is because I know he wanted to be like, you were correct me if I'm wrong, you were a pastor and you were looking to...
I was going to be a pastor. I decided against it. Look, I'm in agreement with Jenna, Mike. I'm in agreement with Jenna that you seem to be somebody who's sincerely seeking and looking for stuff. By all means, I'd recommend hanging out in the Discord and talking with people. Mm-hmm. But also you can email tv@atheist-community.org. And maybe you can call back in and we can have like a number of different conversations, kind of narrow in focus. But my takeaway is always going to be the same. And it's until something changes. And that is, I don't see evidence that is sufficient to warrant belief in a God. And when you present your reasons for believing, not only do I not find them sufficient, I find them, embarrassingly bad. Not that you're stupid for doing it. Everybody does this. Oh my gosh, I just had a close call. Thank God. Or that car almost took me out. Must have been a guardian angel. Or this happened or this happened. It's because we're trained to think that way. And instead, every time you want to credit God with doing something wonderful for you, take a look if there's another way to look at it. Like, hey, did God intentionally cause that car to crash into a house in order to teach me a lesson? Because that God's a dick.
Or could I find another reason that the car crashed into the house? And maybe it's the brakes went out. Maybe because somebody was lazy who knows?
But we got to move on to a couple other calls real quick before we end the show today. But I appreciate Mike, and give us a call back, and keep searching, keep looking for answers.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have a good day.
You too. Yeah, we've only got like 5 minutes left. I'm going to try to see if I can get to 2 calls. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that because we can't go over today. I have I have another show to do at 7:00 because Jimmy Snow from The Line is a little under the weather and asked me to fill in. So I'm going to be doing that today.
Fun.
It is fun. I like having fun and talking to people. We have Ben, is it in Wisconsin, who wants to tell us that it's okay to not believe. How you doing, Ben?
I think you're referring to me. My name is Austin, though, not Ben.
Your name's what?
And,
Austin?
My name is Austin, not Ben. And I just wanted to say I'm from Toma, Wisconsin. And yeah, I am. I was raised Baptist, and I think that it's okay not to believe that God, is or isn't real. Because honestly, as a Baptist, I don't even know. I just choose to believe that He is. And I don't think that this war between atheists and Christians is, very good. I think, we have the internet nowadays, so if you want to know, just go online and check it out for yourself. And,
Do you think that we're engaging in a war?
Yeah.
What is it you want me to check out for myself? Because as a former Southern Baptist who's been studying this stuff my whole life, I don't think telling me that I should just go on the internet and look around really takes into account what I've already done. So does it not matter at all what the truth is?
Well, I think it does, yeah.
But what happens to me when I die? What happens to me when I die if I don't believe in Jesus?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
You'll find out.
Well, no, maybe I won't find out. That's a presumption, because if in fact death is the end, then I won't find out anything. It's not like I'll know I'm dead.
Sure, that's true too.
And so
the reality is that everybody's on a ball flying through space, and nobody has any clue what's going on. History could be one thing, we're just brainwashed through history, or maybe.
Well, no, we do know quite a lot of things. You are calling us on a telephone in 2020 over the internet to a program that we broadcast. I think we know a fuck ton about the world. We just don't know everything.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So when it comes to death, we don't know very much at all.
Well, we do know quite a bit, actually, in that we do know that the claims that something survives, something that makes me survives death, is almost certainly false.
Right. Well, all I'm saying is that when you die, nobody knows what's going to happen to you, if you're going to live on, or if this is just the end forever.
So why would you believe? Why would you? Do you go to church?
Well, wasting your time on earth talking to people about whether or not God is real, and using your time in more valuable ways, like discovering new planets or finding out what happens to your.
Hang on.
How is it?
I mean, you don't even know, and you're trying to convince.
How is this not what you're doing?
No, first of all, you're lying. So let's stop that. First of all, you're also putting words into my mouth. You're saying that I'm sitting here trying to convince people. I'm asking people who believe to present the reasons they believe, and then to either point out why I don't agree with them or why I do. Now, if your religion isn't important to you and you don't care about what truth is, and you can just run around all willy-nilly and say, hey, it's no big deal, you either believe or you don't believe, why did you even bother to call in? Because the only one of the two of us who's genuinely wasting their time is you. Because when I have conversations with people who find their way out of religion, that is me convincing them to be more rational. You're sitting around saying there's no reason for anybody to even try to be rational or care about the truth. So why are you wasting your time calling us, which then wastes our time?
You're about 5 minutes closer to death, and you still just will keep on wasting your time.
So are you, dude.
No. I'm not wasting my time, because I'm using you as a perfect example to anybody else out there who is monumentally ignorant and floating around on the breeze and doesn't think any of this shit matters and doesn't care about whether or not they're true. How embarrassing they appear to people who are otherwise rational, who do give a shit about the world.
How embarrassing is it for you that I just called in and wasted your time?
You didn't waste my time, dumbass. That's what I just explained to you. You're my little play toy that I get to bat around and use as an example of what's going on when you accuse me of wasting time. Somebody's going to learn a valuable lesson from you. Oh, he hung up.
That's okay. I was going to drop him anyway.
Okay.
Basically, I understand why some people look at this and think, oh, they're all just wasting their time. Like, I get that. But I don't understand why those people like him don't just ask, like, hey, why do you guys care so much? And we'll say, hey, I have a lot of reasons why I care. Matt has a lot of reasons why he cares. Everybody's got their own reasons for caring. And so how about instead of bitching about it, we just ask more questions?
Yeah. There was one more call I was going to try to get to, but I'm not, because I want to end the show in a slightly different way. The show, can we put the crew cam back up?
Yeah.
Because there's a person on the crew cam who's not only a former theist, but who sent in an email that I addressed and read on a show, who's now a non-believer and is one of our moderator call screeners involved with all of this. So I definitely don't view this as a waste of my time. Right there in the center square, everybody wave hi to Katie. Circle gets the square.
Yay.
Thank you, everybody, for watching today. Thank you, Jenna, both for, just being awesome and being my good friend, as well as a co-host. We are thrilled that you people decided to join us today, particularly anybody, if you donated, great, thank you. It keeps things going. I don't want to end this on a down note, because we kind of started that way. A friend of mine who also knows Ed Breyton sent a message, and I wanted to read it really quickly. So many dipshits out there who don't know the first thing about U.S. history or constitutional law, walking around not wearing masks, making mouth noises with confidence, and people like Ed have to fight to breathe. Shit ain't right. J2 couldn't have possibly been more correct. My friend knows a great deal about history and the Constitution. And I have some close friends of mine, one of them who's battling COVID right now after previously being in a coma. The world is a mess. Being locked up at home, being unable to interact with certain people. Some people aren't taking this seriously and therefore are taking the rest of us. Like, people like me are the ones who, when there was a class project, we were the ones that did the work while the rest of them went outside and took a smoke break. Stop taking a smoke break. Do what's right for the community that you share. And that includes not being a mask hole. That includes making sure that you are following the guidelines to protect the people that you care about and the people that you don't care about. Because despite what you may think, we have to share space. And there's getting to be this notion that some of you think that all of this space belongs to you, and anybody who doesn't agree can just die off. Well, I don't like seeing my friends die. I don't like seeing them doing it voluntarily. I don't like seeing them do it involuntarily. But when the best people that I know are working to make this world a better place, who don't feel that any of this is a waste of their time, and Christian apologists who I'm supposed to have debates with are advocating for conspiracy theorist nonsense that is dangerous in a world that is overrun by a pandemic, I'm going to stand here or sit here and continue to advocate for reason, science, empathy across the board. And if you're on board with that, you can support and join alongside the atheist community of Austin. And if you're not, line up and call, and I'll smack you around like the other person who thought that this was a waste of time. Because for some of us, it's not a waste of time. And I don't care about finding a new planet unless there's some notion there that we can escape to it to get away from the problems that we have here. We'll see you next time. Please take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?